privileged to share with you my thoughts on being the selfless change we wish to see in the world today. Being Hindu, I once read, related to the history of India, that her real history is based on the history of the lives of some of her spiritual personalities. It is they who have molded her life and determined her destiny. For us as Hindus, India is the land on which our deities were born, and the influence of such deities like Krishna, Buddha, Shankaracharya had a more pronounced influence than any king or emperor. Juxtaposed with the history of South Africa, it is my belief that in the war against apartheid, it was the activists who sacrificed their lives who inspired the greatest change in our country. They arguably practiced a humanity that every organized religion aspires to see in its devotees, that of selflessness for others. I believe that we have been especially blessed in our country. We are blessed to have produced a leader like Nelson Mandela, who was a larger-than-life activist, a hero that came out of prison after sacrificing 27 years of his life, preaching forgiveness for his oppressors. We were blessed also to have produced spiritual personalities from every religion and sect, like Swami Sahajananda, a born South African in KwaZulu-Natal, who, despite wanting to live under the direct teachings of his spiritual teacher in India, was told to stay in South Africa and serve God in the African people here. He did exactly that by building schools and skill centers since 1974, in the height of the apartheid era. We were blessed to produce beings of the ilk of Alan Paton, Beyers Naudé, Joe Slovo, that performed the ultimate sacrifice as white activists, giving up, using their special privileges to help and uplift non-white citizens in an era that cost most of them their lives. And we were blessed to produce countless others like Oliver Tambo, Chris Hani, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Ahmed Kathrada, who influenced our lives in a far greater manner than, of course, the greed, corruption, and evil practices that we see in government today, some corporates and even some NGOs. Have you noticed that we celebrate the humanitarians like Salim Suleiman and environmental activists like Kumi Naidu far more than we celebrate corporate leaders, the tycoons, the wealthy of the world? Why? Because our innate nature of good knows that to uphold the spirit of those that give up things like recognition, wealth, status, even their own lives. And we recognize that as a far greater purpose of our existence. In other words, humanity recognizes first the value of selflessness without us necessarily being prompted to do same. I have worked in Christian international NGOs, and I have served at largely Muslim-based organizations doing humanitarian work. And from my experience with working with other organized religions in this world, I can state almost emphatically that the value of selflessness is a value of the utmost significance, where the real love of God is felt when humans serve each other or give up something consciously or unconsciously to uplift each other, because we recognize that we are connected in our joys and sorrows. Let us not forget about the spirit of Ubuntu itself, a guiding phenomenon of African culture that teaches us that we are so connected. I am because you are. Therefore, my happiness, my joy, my sorrow is directly connected to your happiness, your joy, and your sorrow. Isn't that the lesson that most influential people in this country have taught us? The value we admire most in leadership all over the world. In my own experience, it was never bearing a title that impacted change and transformation in me or in others. It was never sitting in any boardroom, but by walking hand in hand with those that were experiencing abuse, neglect, those who were poverty-stricken, and those who were addicts, that I learned that the value of human connection, our interrelatedness, steers both our own happiness when we bring joy to others. The ripple effect of trying to change oneself serves as inspiration for others to do same, and we set about a chain reaction that will indeed bring about change to the world. Just as one candle lights another without self-destructing and losing its own light, we should change ourselves to inspire transformation in others and thereby help them to set about change in the world. While we are doing good selfless work, we do not know how much good it would do for the world. In truth, real happiness for ourselves lies in the happiness of others. In doing selfless work to inspire the happiness of others and create collaboration and unity, we can create heaven here on earth. There is a brilliant, simple story from my spiritual mentor that illustrates this perfectly. A person wanted to see heaven and hell. He landed first in hell, where he was met by the sight of a table filled with the most mouth-watering delicacies in the world. Several people were seated around the table, but he noticed that their hands were tied at the wrist with a spoon between their hands. They looked sad and stressed because even though they faced such a treat, they could not reach the food to feed themselves, as the spoon could not be maneuvered to feed. Despite all this wonderful spread, nothing could be enjoyed. This was hell. He was then taken to heaven and shocked at being greeted at the same scene. Once again, the most delicious decadent items were placed on a table, and around the table sat people, once again with their hand tied, and this time with the spoon tied at their elbows, so they could bend and maneuver their arms to feed each other. Here, all were happy. They realized that because they could feed the next person, they would in turn be fed. So you see, we create hell on earth by our selfishness, and we create heaven on earth by our selflessness and unselfish work. We are not only creating happiness, but allowing ourselves to take care of others, therefore taking care of our own mental well-being. So you see, it won't make you any less happy to make others happy. Happiness and joy therefore spreads to everyone. This land, our country, its people are served when we choose to transform ourselves. When we transform ourselves, we transform others. Philanthropy starts with each of us in our homes, taking care and serving each other, our neighbors, the province, each of us in our land, indeed the world. Why do we look forward to only resting in peace when we can live in peace? This is the essence of why you should be the change that you want to see in the world. Going back to my own life's influences, it is an interesting phenomenon that at every critical time in the cultural and spiritual life of nations, there has been born a saint who has saved the country from a fatal catastrophe and shown the nation the right direction. Open your eyes. They are already among us in the world and indeed in South Africa already. Look to those uplifting others silently in communities in our country and around the world. They are among us, and their influence lies in you also, waiting to be unleashed. So go out and be the change you wish to see in the world. Do it selflessly for even higher rewards. Thank you.
Speaking with confidence can't be faked, but it can be cultivated. Do you find yourself confident 80 to 90% of the time, but that 10%, when it really matters, in those high-stake moments, you stumble, mumble, diminish yourself, doubt yourself? I want to help you shift gears with my latest new offering. It's the Confidence Booster Session. Hi, I'm Ursula Botha. I'm a speaking and confidence coach, and here's how the Confidence Booster Session will work. First, we get together online for 90 minutes. The first thing we do is identify your speaking diminishes. These are the bad speaking habits you've built over many years, and then we will work on your confidence strategy. After the session, I will send you the confidence action plan that you will be implementing for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll get together for a 30-minute follow-up call where we will tweak and fine-tune everything we need to shift your gears into that next level of speaking confidence so that you can position yourself for career advancement. To get hold of this awesome new offering, you can go to my website, confidentvoices.co.za.
You're watching HybriCON 2022. I'm Nico Steyn, and I'm thrilled that was Videshni Singh. Thank you so very much for that. That was such a great message.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you for having me.
I think it's just so fitting that that's what we round up with as our last keynote. And I have thanks again for it. And I have so many questions about it. But I wanted to start fetching it because you come yourself from the corporate world. Mm-hmm. Your background is legal, right?
Yes,
Do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Okay, so I actually had the advantage of climbing the corporate ladder. I was articled, or I was a candidate attorney in one of the top 5 law firms of the country almost 25 years ago. I then became a legal advisor, a senior legal advisor, and later I taught law in law school. And post that, I worked as an acting magistrate or magistrate in training at the Children's Court in Johannesburg. So yes, that has been my illustrious career that
Beautiful.
I don't barely, I take it nowhere these days.
but the wonderful thing is that this was the inspiration for the work that you do with Lightworks.
Always.
Please tell us about how that started.
Okay, so I believe that Lightworkers was created out of an inspiration to live a purposeful life and an existence that were far more meaningful to me than just the title and the wealth that career comes with. Nico, my life was impacted when I gave birth to a special needs baby who's like 13 years old. In that time, for me, what I started seeing more was almost the imperfection of this perfect world. That's what this child represented to me. And if ever there was a lesson in selflessness, it was the lesson that I learned through motherhood when I had to feed this baby through 6 hours, drop by drop, into his little mouth because he couldn't feed on his own. Through Yudav, I spent almost 5 years going through 15 operations. And each time, I think sometimes when we go through that type of trauma or life-changing experience, you start to question everything about your life. And for me, it was about being this kind of mother to other children in need. And while there was nothing in my delivery today that wanted to speak to this audience about being the epitome of selflessness, because I'm very far from that, I still feel so. I wanted to make the message strong because I know there are many colleagues that are sitting in careers that are feeling stifled and want to start chasing purpose. And here I am saying that there is nothing wrong with that. You can be successful wherever you might land. And of course, my lesson that I learned with having given up a salary in order to do this work was that sometimes that's a nice to have too, because you end up depriving yourself.
Yeah. Now, it's such a gorgeous story, and I think what you're doing is amazing. But when people sit and they watch, how do we start changing the world? How do we get to even just dial in once a day and go do one small thing that's selfless? I mean, how do we begin?
Okay, when you spoke about rounding this up in the best possible way, I want to actually commend you on your selflessness in putting this project together. When I look at you, I look at how selflessly you've been working over this period of, 14 days, and even before that, 14 days live, which is taxing for any individual, allowing ordinary people like me to have a chance to have their voices heard. But back to your question. What is it that little thing that people can do to change daily towards their goal and transform themselves? I actually believe that ultimately, in whatever job that you are doing, start looking at what you are doing as purposeful in the now. And later, you will be able to make more leaps and bounds to serving an even greater purpose in that role. What I wanted to bring strongly as a message, even in my own life, was the fact that we have all these professional qualifications. We can actually start taking these qualifications to communities. I watched the impact of my qualification working for a local NGO. I watched the impact of my qualification working for an international NGO. So you can take whatever talent and whatever gift you might be blessed with, and that today is even the special skills in your profession, and use it to serve.
That's wonderful, and I'm going to say thank you very much for your compliment. I'm going to take it. It's wonderful. I've just learned some of that myself during this, listening to such a wide range of people share also very, very generously what they know, on the air. And so I'm also thrilled that there were so many people coming along to do this. I hear what you're saying about, and obviously, I mean, in your instance, you made a very huge shift to go. I'm also asking about smaller shifts that people can do, because I think that it's what you're talking about, just seeing things around you that are not registering and not vibrating right. That we have to start changing, right?
Exactly. I've been chatting to colleagues of mine that are looking at, the tea ladies at work, or whatever other helpers that there might be in the office space, taking a few minutes with them to read every day because they want to improve their English. We can do those little things among us already. You shared, I think it was on your LinkedIn post, about the Uber driver and the kindness that was shown to him and demonstrated that day. I mean, how life-changing that was for the person that gave to him and for him. And that effect that the charity had was even strengthened by you relating the story and touching others with same. So we all don't need to give up our professions. We can do whatever we can within the space of our everyday life to uplift each other. Sometimes when we're looking at the condition and the state of mental health these days, even sharing a smile, asking, how are you? being bold enough to say, you know what, I need a hug when I need a hug, like I did, you know. It's important to be that open, and, you know, because we're watching what's happening with suicides today. You know, Nico, it really got my goat the other day to realize that there was someone that suffered a mental breakdown at work, you know, rolling on the floor, shouting, the bosses are coming, purely by the stress and the strain that she was going through by a superior that was, you know, actively abusing her. And what I want to say is that when we see people in situations like that, it's, you know, we must realize that it could be us the next day.
Yeah.
And we have to make every effort to check in on each other in the office space too.
And support and stop
support.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to come back and talk more about this. I really do want to ask how not only leaders but self-leading can work, and I also want to ask more about the Lightworkers. We're going to be back talking to Videshni Singh right after this.
What next? The story you need to work on to grow from here. Now you've started your business, you've got a product out there, you've got a service going, you have some feedback, you've got an idea of who your customers are, you've got some engagement going on social media, and that's great. I hope that all this content has helped you figure out how you can get going in your business without the big funny stuff, but just small, simple steps that can gradually help you get out there. So think about, can you get a mentor? Should you diversify your customers? Should you get new people to be customers? Should you get old people to buy new products? What are some different things you can work with that you can tweak to get you more sales and more traction in your business? Think about how you can continue to share on social media so people know about your story. Think about where you failed and what you need to improve. Think about what's working well and what isn't, and how you change those. It's okay if your business isn't working out how you thought. Take the feedback, adjust your product and service, change your market. It's okay to be agile, and that agility will help you stay in business. If you've enjoyed these 10 quick snippets on getting out there and starting your business, head over to our website or use this link and forward it to a friend. It's great to have more people be in business together so that we can continue to grow our community of entrepreneurs. And it's better to fail together, I promise you that, but also learning together as we grow our businesses. We hope that this has been valuable to you, and we wish you the best as you grow your business.
You're watching HybriCON 2022. We've just had the closing keynote, which was by Videshni Singh, and thanks so much for having this conversation. I feel that there's so much value coming out and so much worth.
Thank you, Nico.
I wanted to ask you about specifically Lightworkers and what you do there and how it impacts, and just tell us a little bit more. We didn't get enough the previous time.
Okay. So Lightworkers is almost a decade next year in 2023. We are a registered NPO. Lightworkers began when I set about with a group of professional women going into communities, supplying firstly basic needs. So when we heard the communities were in need of bedding, furniture, baby food, whatever it might have been, we decided that we were going to, like professional women, set up our laptops, and we were going to take needs analysis and do it in the most professional way in terms of our delivery. 3 months later, because I was walking in that community, I saw that everything that we had delivered was gone. And we were left with egg on our faces, basically, because we had to decide now, how can we continue to support this if the beneficiaries themselves are going to be getting rid of the goods? When we dug deeper, we found that the most significant issue in that community was drug addiction. And using my legal background, I canvassed outside the Department of Social Development, and I created in that community a local drug action group by bringing together the major stakeholders like the NPA, the police services, social organizations, just to address the problem. Of course, because I live out here in Sandton, it wasn't easy to lead. And so I feigned, and I'm going to be very brave and say that I faked gastric flu on that day because I wanted the community to actually take hold of the opportunity of having this at in their hands. Unfortunately, I believe it became a soapbox for people to prosper in their own careers, and we were still facing the issues of addiction years later. So starting with work in that community, I then started working very closely with the one social services institution that was responsible for the community members. And so through social services, having worked with them for all these years, we started developing programs to address addiction. So we had programs for women, children. After I left the magistrates court and the training at the magistrates court, I realized that our social systems are crumbling. We don't have a Department of Social Development to address the needs of children anymore. What I've seen even in the legal system in terms of the brokenness there was enough to put me into a depression, feeling that we're bordering on such extreme child neglect now that I don't even know how many lives have been lost as a result of this crumbling system. And so for me, it was important to actually take a job. I became a marketing manager at social services. I asked for that job. And I then started creating programs actively, where I started a program called Stop It at the Start to address gender-based violence, addressing males and male toxicity that is, responsible for gender-based violence as well. And I'm sad to say that most of the children that were delivered to us were children who had experienced abuse themselves, who were starting to rape each other in bathrooms, because that is what is going on in our country right now. And that is why I keep saying that if we don't step in to help, who is going to change things? With our professional qualifications, because we have social workers earning a pittance right now. And the entire society's breakdown lies upon their shoulders to make a difference. How are they going to possibly do it? It is a huge weight. So Lightworkers kind of became the channel to assist social services. And I even created homework centers for the children in communities, which I ran, using my time and creating sewing skills programs. And now, just on Friday, after starting a youth wing of the organization, our girls delivered 900 hampers, toiletry hampers, to girls that were about to settle upon their exams. So the work continues.
Marvelous. Now, if somebody had to watch now, how can people get involved? Because there's no one person sitting there going, well, let it just roll, right?
No, agreed.
How can people get involved?
Look, firstly, contact me. We have programs running. We have a special Santa shoebox that we have on at the moment, because we support about 5 to 6 actually it's grown to more like 10 or 11 right now, creches all over the country, and we would love for donations towards that. You can contact me to become involved as a volunteer, get hands-on experience. I know that we are sitting in privileged suburbs where parents want to involve their children in acts of service. I wanted that for my own children. And today I stand proud that my daughter actually delivered that drive on Friday. So if you want that for your children, then reach out to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. In closing, I'm going to ask you about this thought that we're not really looking for leadership to help save anymore. We all have to, there has to be a little bit of self-leadership and development. We have to see transformation on the ground and internally, right?
Right.
Do you want to comment on that maybe in closing?
I think in closing, it has been the message that I've been stringing throughout this entire presentation. And that is, we have a brain drain, really, with lack of skills and professional support on the ground. If there is any way that you can lend your services to any NGO, because if you understand how our government worked years ago, all these bodies became like privatized institutions who were just getting a stipend from the government to run social services. We know that social workers don't even have petrol or money for petrol in their cars these days. So in order to assist, try to find out where your local social service institution might be. Take your professional qualifications to support NGOs. You can make a difference in that way.
Thank you. That is a marvelous and a very powerful message. I thank you very much for your time and for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity that you've provided all of us with. Go home and rest.
Thank you. There you have it. Almost at the end of it. Thank you very, very much for watching. We'll be back with more right after this.